LA Noire. I love it. You probably love it. It's one of those games that was an artifact of its time in many ways. You know, like you go back and you try to replay it and it's not aged the best, mainly because of like the technology they used for facial capture. It was very, very interesting, very weird. But basically, if you never played this because you're young, because you know, you want to know something really depressing for everybody? There's people watching this video, probably in this stream right now, who were born after LA Noire came out. Feel old? I do. Every day. So just sit on that for a minute. Came out in 2011, okay? So there's people that were born after this game came out who are approaching their mid-teens. Do we have anybody? Yeah, actually, I'm not going to ask that because I don't. Luke's asking if he has any children in his chat. No, I'm not. I don't care. But I'm just saying there's people out there that might be watching this that, you know, were born after this, okay? So you might not be familiar with LA Noire, but basically what they did is they used a cool sort of like the surround camera thing where you sit in the enclosure and then they have a bajillion cameras all around and they film from a bunch of different angles the actor's face, and then they map that face onto a mesh within the game, almost like a projection. So it's not really an animated mesh moving lips and mouths and jaws and eyes and things. It's actually basically, think of it as like a video or a moving texture on top of a mesh. That's basically what's happening here. And what makes it interesting is because of how they captured that, the actors were sitting in their chairs like this, doing all of the voice acted delivery. So they would be like, yes, Mrs. Brown, I'm interested in what you think about this case. But that dialogue might have been happening while they're walking. So then they do the motion capture of the character walking, and they have to map the facial capture onto that moving body. So you have instances where somebody's walking down the street talking, but their head is like, yes, I'm wondering what you think of that. And it doesn't work at all. It doesn't blend because the person, when they were delivering the dialogue, wasn't walking like in modern mocap studios. They were sitting in a chair, and then later they did the motion capture. So the whole game was a fascinating use of technology for the time, but in the modern day, it certainly would be a very inefficient and impractical way of doing it.
I'm sorry to have to tell you this, Michelle, but your mother is dead.
Caleb donated $20 through Super Chat.
Doesn't work that
There's
great.
people in chat younger than Noire. Shut up, Luke. I didn't ask to be attacked like this. I know I'm old, I don't need to be reminded.
Every day, man, I'm going to remind you every day. Every day. Dude, I have a little sister who every once in a while, she'll just like casually mention something where she's like going through her adult life. It's like, yeah, I had to go to the DMV and do this and that. I'm like, you're like 5 years old. What are you talking about? Because in my head, she's still like 5 years old. I remember when my parents brought her back home from the hospital. I'm like, what are you doing driving a car? Sit down. Like, what are you doing? It's a problem, dude. We're all getting old. Just buckle up. Death's a-coming. One day closer every day. With that said, yeah, your mother is dead. Caleb super chatted $20. See, that's a time to interrupt with a super chat. Well done, Caleb. Well done. That's how you interrupt a stream segment. Jacob, you're keeping this in. If somebody throws $20 at me, they get to be in the stream clip. We're doing it. Okay, continuing on. Some funny clips just to wet your palate. Is that a term? I don't know.
Do you think you could answer a few questions for us?
This is the other thing, is the actors, because they were sitting in these cages, they weren't acting against actors. They were just talking and delivering lines to a camera. And so they have to like try and act off of each other, imagining what the actress or actor would be saying and reacting to. It was tough. The fact that LA Noire is even remotely digestible as a piece of media is remarkable, because they were fighting uphill when it came to like actually capturing and doing all of this. It's not easy. Like actors all the time complaining about having to like do their scenes in front of a green screen or something. Imagine doing like a 50, 60, 70 hour video game with tons of dialogue, talking to a white box, you know, and a bunch of cameras, trying to act off of actors that aren't in the room. It's crazy.
Try.
When did you last see your mother?
Yesterday afternoon, I went to a dance at Belmont High. Mommy was supposed to pick me up, but
Dude, the
she
music.
didn't show.
So what did you do then?
Pure
I was
nostalgia.
upset. Daddy came instead.
You're feeling guilty about
That little thing, it happened quick. But this is the centerpiece, because again, there's some people out there in the community who have not ever seen or played this game. The whole idea of the game was they had to do this delicate facial capture because you were going to use it to determine whether they were telling the truth, whether they were maybe hiding something, or whether they were lying. And basically how the mechanic worked out was it was the truth if you believe them. You'd press lie if you have evidence to prove that they're not telling you the truth. And you use doubt if you don't have evidence pointing that they're lying, but you still think they are. Then they have other cool things like intuition to get an idea of like what other players did and all sorts of cool mechanics like that. But they kind of had to use this technology at the time to do it. And LA Noire, you know, it's a weird game because it was developed by Team Bondi, who knows? Whatever. They were a secondary studio, but they were published by Rockstar Games. So this is something Rockstar used to do, is they used to publish a lot of games, and the games were like relatively similar to like the core games that they would make, but they would publish a bunch of stuff and put their logo on it and make sure it met their like quality standards. And Rockstar just hasn't done that, which is interesting because basically what happened is any games that Rockstar would have published, instead they started getting published by Take-Two, and then it freed up Rockstar to not have to worry about supervising that stuff. So they could just focus on GTA, just focus on Red Dead. But they used to publish stuff too, which is very interesting. But as a result, like they let them use their technology, they let them use their tools, and they had to meet certain qualitative standards to earn the Rockstar badge, you know, on top of it. And you can see even in how they presented the cover art, Rockstar Games presents LA Noire. So they're straight up putting their name on this thing. They are not pretending as though, you know, this is, you know, some other team and yeah, we're technically publishing. No, they're very proudly presenting this basically as a Rockstar game, which is interesting. You can see the development of LA Noire began following Team Bondi's founding in 2004, was assisted by multiple Rockstar studios worldwide. It uses a proprietary motion capture technology, MotionScan, which nowadays is kind of obsolete, but at the time was very innovative and crazy. It was the first video game honored as an official selection at the Tribeca Film Festival. The game was released on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in May of 2011 in Windows and for Windows in November. An enhanced version was released for Nintendo Switch, PS4, and Xbox One in November of 2017. It received positive reviews from critics with praise directed at facial animation, narrative, characters, performance, music, world design, interrogation, gameplay, though responses to the shooting and driving mechanics were mixed. It shipped 4 million units in its first month and 7.5 million by September and won all sorts of rewards. They also had a VR game, The Case Files, release in December of 2017. And it was very interesting because it came out and then shortly after, as you can see, so they've got a description of this guy, Brendan McNamara, who directed the game and was head of the studio, creative director, all of that. Yeah, here you can get kind of an idea of how it worked. But what happened was kind of frustrating. So staff complained. Shortly after release, a group of former Team Bondi employees launched a website called LANoireCredits.com, containing over 100 names excluded or incorrectly listed in the final credits. An anonymous employee claimed he was asked to work 10 to 12 hours every day, including weekends. Following this, in a report by IGN, several anonymous members of the team publicly discussed the studio's managerial, staff turnover rates, and working hours and conditions associated with LA Noire. Some claimed that McNamara had been controlling and verbally abusive, and others spoke about their increased workload as a result of high turnover. Several referenced the ongoing crunch throughout development, one claimed to occasionally work between 80 and 110 hours per week to meet milestones. Some ex-employees claimed they were not paid overtime, which McNamara refuted. So there's a dispute over a lot of this. And I want to be clear, for legal reasons, of course, that a lot of this is allegations, alleged, and not necessarily proven. So there's people that are claiming that this is what they experienced, but then there's disputes from, of course, Rockstar, Take-Two, Team Bondi leadership, and all of that. Following the publication of the report, the International Game Developers Association launched an investigation against Team Bondi to verify the claims made. Lead gameplay programmer David Hieronymus, that's a cool name, and senior gameplay programmer Charles Lefebvre Rebutted. I'm sorry for butchering that. I just don't know how to pronounce BVRE. It's a lot of consonants. Anyway, rebutted the claims, acknowledging crunch was unfortunate but inevitable, stating that they were not aware of any unpaid overtime or abusive working conditions. McNamara felt he had been unfairly maligned by many ex-employees, noting that other artists and businessmen in other industries, such as Steve Jobs, Sam Peckinpah, and Werner Herzog, had performed worse actions than he had, with much less vilification. He claimed the studio had improved its working conditions in the months after release, including the introduction of FlexiTime. In July of 2011, a series of confidential emails leaked, along with further comments from staff members who claimed they highlight the contentious relationship between Team Bondi and Rockstar. McNamara questioned how the confidential emails were allowed to be shared, noting that it sets a, quote, pretty dangerous precedent. Speaking to GamesIndustry.biz, an anonymous source from the development team claimed that Rockstar, quote unquote, saved the project, but the relationship between Rockstar and Team Bondi was badly damaged, and it was quite clear further collaborations were unlikely. The source claimed that Rockstar was frustrated with the direction at Team Bondi, and as a result, management at Team Bondi, quote unquote, resented Rockstar for taking lots of creative control. They added Rockstar used to be very keen on making Team Bondi something like Rockstar Sydney, but the more they worked with Team Bondi management, the more they came to understand that this was a terrible idea. McNamara remained optimistic about his relationship with Rockstar and said, hopefully it doesn't have any hard feelings about us. This little thing about Team Bondi eventually becoming Rockstar Sydney, keep that in the back of your mind, okay? The idea that they're going to take the team run by McNamara and turn it into basically a mini Rockstar. Remember that. Remember that. After the game came out and, was released, some time went by, but in early August of 2011, it was reported that Team Bondi was seeking a buyer, with McNamara being seen around offices of Australian film studio Kennedy Miller Mitchell, believed to negotiate acquisition deals. But on August 9th of 2011, Kennedy Miller Mitchell announced that they had acquired all of Team Bondi's assets as well as the intellectual property to the game McNamara was presently writing the script for. All employees, 35 at the time, were given the opportunity to move to them. Team Bondi was placed into Team Bondi was placed into administration on 31st August 2011. At the request of Team Bondi's creditors, the company entered liquidation October 5th. The liquidation paid out. They owed 40 creditors as much as $1.4 million, unpaid wages and bonuses accounting for 75% of those debts. 33 staff credited their work on LA Noire were owed a combined $1 million in unpaid wages or bonuses. Among those, McNamara claimed to be owed $102,000. General manager Vicky Lord was owed just under $100,000, and lead programming and gameplay designer David Hieronymus was owed about $43,000. Depth analysis was also reported to be owed $145,000. Not great. Lots of mismanagement. Money didn't flow the way they needed it. And it makes me wonder if perhaps this was an instance of financial mismanagement paired with just general studio mismanagement. But either way, the whole thing kind of imploded. Despite LA Noire's success, the team that made it imploded. They worked on another game after this called Whore of the Orient. I would love to see the game released with that name nowadays. Can you imagine the freak out? IGN and Eurogamer just like they would lose their minds, but that's what it was called. Okay, that's what it was called. It was announced that this new game would contain one of the greatest untold stories of the 20th century. Developed at KMM Interactive Entertainment, McNamara was once again appointed as creative director of the game. They said they were passionate about the project. 4-dimensional storytelling, and a game can literally become the equivalent of a novel. It's a movie that's played interactively at home. The studio had planned to go ahead developing 2 new games with the support of government funding. It was set to be a spiritual successor of LA Noire. The game was targeted for release on Windows, PS4, and Xbox One, and they were guesstimating a release of 2015. However, didn't really work out too well. Warner Brothers was named to have signed a publishing deal for the game. Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment, though, pulled out of the publishing deal in December of 2012. And as a result of this, and due to general investment issues, KMM Interactive was shut down in April of 2013, and all staff was released. Although not made official, it was widely believed that the Horror of the Orient was effectively canceled with the studio closure. Regardless, the game received a $200,000 investment from the Australian government agency Screen NSW in June of 2013. Some journalists noted that the move felt rather illogical as the development had previously been slow. Now that the game studio had closed, the investment would not be of use for the agency. And then you can see other things like this. In September of 2013, City of Monash, which is a local government in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, the councillor Jae Young Lo stated that he was offended by the game's title, with it being a, quote, disgrace to Chinese culture, daring to report the game to the Human Rights Commission. Lo further underlined, quote, its use of the word Orient more even than the word whore. That is the issue. The O word is very similar to the N word for African American communities. Horror of the Orient is not heard from that point on. When asked about the game's status in June of 2014, podcast host on GameBugs, producer Derek Proud, stated, I don't think so, implying the game had been canceled. So there's even debate over whether or not the game existed. Like, they received money from the government and they were trying to figure out if the game was even being made still, and nobody really knew, which is weird. Like, it's a little crazy. So all of this just continued to flood out over the next handful of years. The game never really happened, of course. There were some leaks and like gameplay clips that leaked that basically it was like a guy running through a like meat market or something. Very simple gameplay, like pre alpha, like in the middle of nowhere. But as time went by, it received a little bit more money from various institutions and stuff, but it never really went anywhere. After that, McNamara founded Sydney-based studio Video Game Deluxe in 2013. Their first release was LA Noire: The VR Case Files in 2017. In 2020, the studio announced they were working on a AAA open world VR game for Rockstar. In October of 2021, it was revealed to be the VR version of GTA San Andreas. Following the release of MetaQuest 3 in October 2023, players questioned the status of the VR version, and some suspected it may have been quietly canceled. Meta said the port was on hold indefinitely in August of last year. And then Video Game Deluxe developed the mobile versions of GTA, the Trilogy Definitive Edition in 2023, and took over post-release development of Grove Street Games in 2024. So they've maintained a relationship with Rockstar. And all of this builds to the fact that something has happened. GTA developer announces Rockstar Australia studio bringing LA Noire boss back into the fold. Brendan McNamara is back within GTA developer Rockstar officially now, not as the guy running a small studio working for them, but now officially as the head of the newly acquired and retitled studio Rockstar Australia. Remember when previously they were saying that they were hoping one day Team Bondi could become basically Rockstar Sydney? Well, now they announced that they bought McNamara's studio, the Sydney-based developer, and now they're being retitled as Rockstar Australia, almost Rockstar Sydney. So the hope from a decade ago ended up basically being fulfilled. Up until this point, they've worked on a lot of like VR games, and now they're doing like support and updates and stuff on those GTA remaster re-releases. But there's an opportunity they do more than just support projects. Rockstar has previously expressed interest in revisiting franchises that have long sat dormant, such as LA Noire. And when they initially started dropping the VR case files and stuff, people got excited because they were like, oh, it's 2017. It's been 6 years. They might be bringing LA Noire back. They might be experimenting, seeing what the feedback's like, seeing if people are still interested in the franchise. And based on that success, they might choose to greenlight maybe a remake with modern tech, or maybe just a sequel fully, or a spiritual successor. It wasn't really clear. As of today, they've bought out the studio. They are renaming it Rockstar Australia, and McNamara is back. Perhaps it's a lesson that you never burn a bridge if you can help it. You just don't burn a bridge. McNamara could have freaked out that like Rockstar wasn't saving his company that made a successful game and let the company kind of implode and go to another guy. He could have thrown a fit and like complained about Rockstar and burned those bridges, but he didn't. And now a decade later, because of his relationship ongoing with Rockstar, he has a job again and he's back in the fold, which is, you know, an interesting development to say the very, very least, because just a handful of years ago, the idea that he'd be back in the fold would be very surprising. So realistically, what are they working on? Probably just continued support for other games and projects. I think it's cheaper for Rockstar to just buy them out, have them keep working on these little remasters and stuff and do it that way. They probably remember what it was like working with McNamara, and if it's true that they had to kind of micromanage the project, it would make sense if they were like, let's not give him a full like creative director role on a new project again. And also like the team primarily has experience with like VR and stuff, so they're probably not doing LA Noire 2. What do I hope they're doing? I mean, of course I hope we get anything new for LA Noire as a franchise. I love the setting in LA Noire. I love the music, the art direction, the writing, just across the board. I love me some LA Noire, and I would love to revisit that franchise again, if you can even call it a franchise again, but we shall see. We shall see. But nonetheless, it's a very interesting development, specifically to bring these guys in and this guy with his history to bring him in. Yeah, X to doubt. I think we should all X to doubt that this actually turns into LA Noire 2, but we can hope and cope, perhaps, but time will tell. Who knows? Maybe we'll see that other project he was working on renamed and see it brought back into the fold. It seemed like an interesting idea at the time, but who knows like where it actually was going to end up. It's just really, really hard to tell, frankly, because the game just kind of fizzled out of existence, which is always kind of a weird way for something to end. You can see the only screenshot ever released for the game was this one. And so they had like some environments built and, you know, the game looked graphically pretty impressive, but my understanding is that it was basically, a canceled action adventure game. It was in development at KMM Interactive. Let's see, in 2012 it was targeting 2013 or 2015 release. It was confirmed canceled in 2016, having not had a status update in 2013. Set in 1936, the game would have centered around the corrupt city of Shanghai in the hands of Western powers, filled with mob crime and political troubles. The Kuomintang ruthlessly puts down labor movements in an effort to suppress communism, while the international police force attempt to maintain peace. Definitely a game we've not seen before. Could have been interesting. Could have been cool. Maybe we see that as like, rebooted or something. Who knows? But only time will tell. I think it's probably likely that KMM owns the rights to whatever they worked on, even if they're never, ever going to touch it again. So they'd probably have to do something totally unique and totally new. But even if it is just a remake from the ground up of LA Noire, I would be there for it. The tough thing is, like, people have asked in the past, they've come into stream and they've been like, Luke, do you think they'll ever remaster LA Noire? They're remastering all the other stuff. And same questions will be asked if they'll remake it. The problem is that, like, when you do The Last of Us Part 1 remake, you can use all the same, like, motion capture. You can use all the same voice acting and voice capture. The problem with LA Noire is that because of how they built it, there is no easy way to do that. Like, they can't use the facial scans, so they'd have to re-motion capture everything. And if you're re-motion capturing everything, you have to re-record everything. Do you bring back the original actors? You could. I think that relatively easily. The ones that are willing to come back, the ones that are interested and that aren't asking ridiculous sums of money, because that's happened before. It's like voice actors on previous games will ask ridiculous sums of money and then they don't get the job. And then they go on social media and complain about it. But with this, I mean, it's not as simple as like, oh, we remade the assets, we remade the character models and stuff, and now we just kind of put that in place of the old stuff and then let the machine kind of run with maybe some tweaks to it. No, like, you're rebuilding everything from scratch, which can be done. It can be done. Great example of when it's done well, Mafia Definitive Edition. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. That game is a phenomenal example of rebuilding something old from the ground up in a way that totally reinvents the experience and modernizes it, makes it playable again. brilliantly well done. So it's possible, but it's expensive and time consuming. But if you're willing to buy out an entire studio, maybe that's why you're doing it, because you plan on doing that. I'll tell you what, LA Noire sold $4.5 million or 4.5 million units in its first year, 7.5 by like 2016, 17, or 7.5 by 2016, 17. I think they could easily get 5 to 10 million copies for a full high quality remake of LA Noire. Bunch of old people that remember the game's launch will buy it. A bunch of people like me who were younger when the game came out but still love it will buy it. And I think a whole new generation will buy it because the game is really good. I think it's a layup, fam. I think it's a layup. So Rockstar, call me. Please. I don't know why you would need to call me, but just call me. We can talk about stuff. Please. Anyway, that's where we're at with it. So we'll keep an eye on what they're doing because it's very interesting. He took my thing.